Good afternoon. Welcome back, everyone, to our Options Education webinar series. My name is Tony Zhang. I'm the Chief Strategist here at Options Play, and we have a very special event for you this afternoon. This has been requested by a lot of you with regards to how you can potentially use AI to improve your trading. You may have recently noticed some new AI tools being launched in your first trade account in the past few weeks. Here, we're going to talk a little bit about ChatGPT. Many of you obviously know what ChatGPT is. Some of you may have used it. Some of you may use it all the time. But I want to specifically show you some of the latest updates with ChatGPT 4.0, how you can potentially utilize it to improve your trading as a trader. So let's go ahead and get started. What we are doing here every other Wednesday with our options education sessions at noon Eastern is to empower you to trade sustainably and confidently and make sure that you have a well-rounded education with regards to your trading, your access to trading tools. And ChatGPT, obviously a unconventional tool, but an extremely powerful tool. And the latest build of ChatGPT is incredibly powerful, and I want to show you the different ways that you could potentially use it in conjunction with First Trade and Options Play to help you fine-tune your trading skills and make sure that you stick to those trading skills. So what we're going to discuss here today is purely for education and demonstration purposes. It is not a solicitation or recommendation to buy or sell any of the specific securities that we'll be using as example purposes during today's session. So my goal here today is to help you explore different ways that you can use the latest version of ChatGPT 4.0 to improve your trading. And we'll start with kind of the foundational knowledge of how to use ChatGPT and what the latest version includes. And then we'll get into a specific tutorial. We'll look at specific use cases and prompts that you can use to immediately improve your trading using ChatGPT alongside your First Trade account and your Options Play account. So in the latest ChatGPT 4.0 update, now this is, at least at this point now, 2 months old, so it's not new, but it is relatively new to ChatGPT. The 4.0 is not 4.0, it's actually 4 and the letter O, and the O represents Omni. Which represents the multimodal support that ChatGPT supports. Meaning, in the previous version of ChatGPT, the only way to input anything into ChatGPT was text, and the only thing you got out of ChatGPT was text. Now, previously, anything that, if let's say you were to upload an image, what ChatGPT would do, it would convert that image into text, enter that text into ChatGPT, and then you would get text back out. But now what it does is it truly interprets text, images, videos, and then can also spit back things out in text and images and charts and things like that. So it's a true multi-channel support now that ChatGPT supports, and that is the most important update to what I'm going to show you here today, because you're going to be able to effectively have ChatGPT review things that you're looking at on your screen in real time and provide you with feedback. Provided that you give ChatGPT the right prompts, it's going to help you facilitate your options trading or your trading in general. It has better understanding of comprehension and more accurate responses. It has more personalization. It has obviously expanded knowledge in terms of more up-to-date information across a wider range of topics. This includes the ability to search the internet in a much better fashion. It's still not as fast as Google's Gemini, but it is far better in terms of its ability to interpret things, and it is obviously much more faster compared to previous versions. So we're going to go through some examples to show you kind of how you can utilize this for your trading. So what I'm going to show you today is predominantly going to span 3 things. One is to help you provide an objective view on your research. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some examples of how you can use ChatGPT to help you become a better technical analyst. Many of you use technical analysis and charts in your trading, but I would say one of the biggest challenges that traders have with technical analysis is us as humans. We are inconsistent. We are beautifully inconsistent as human beings. And that inconsistency leads us to stray away from our core strategy. It allows us to add biases into our analysis that we should not be adding biases into. So what ChatGPT or what we can tell ChatGPT to do is to help us provide a more objective view on our analysis so that we're not adding our own subjectivity and our own biases into our interpretation of the charts. And I'll kind of walk you through what that means here in a couple of minutes. The second thing I'm going to walk you through here today is a checklist adherence. We all in our trading, at one point or another, establish rules for ourselves for trading. But many times when it actually comes to executing a trade, many times we may not review all of those rules that we have in place. We may bend those rules when we have a trade that perhaps we really like, or for whatever reason, we're biased towards that specific trade and we're willing to bend the rules. So what we're going to walk ChatGPT through here today is a list of our rules and make sure that every single trade can be processed by ChatGPT for the rules that you have set for yourself. So you have a clear understanding as to whether or not a trade meets all of the rules that you have set for yourself. And then lastly, what I'll show you is how you can use ChatGPT to be a research assistant. If you worked as a professional as on a trading desk somewhere, you would have access to research assistants that would help you do analysis on research, on charts, on graphs. What we're going to do is we're going to show you how you can use ChatGPT to become your personal assistant on anything related to research. So those are the few different use cases that I've come up with. There are far, far, far more many use cases that you could potentially come up with. But I think this gives a pretty good starting point for a lot of investors who may not be using ChatGPT today to understand what the power of AI is going to be in helping you become a better trader. So the first one we'll take a look at is chart analysis. And this is really what is key about the latest version of ChatGPT, because the previous versions you couldn't give ChatGPT a chart and ask it to interpret it for you. Now, the new version allows you to upload a technical analysis chart, and you can ask ChatGPT what it's seeing. But in my opinion, that's not particularly useful, because what you want it to do is to help you stick to a specific set of rules. What do I mean by this? A lot of traders, you might be familiar with, let's say, a popular indicator like a moving average. However, what I have found in my 17 years as a market strategist working with thousands of traders is that even the best intentioned traders and the traders that that have a solid trading system will many times deviate from their trading charts or their technical analysis if their original analysis doesn't align with their biases, right? You might have a view on a specific stock. Let's say you're reading some news article on a specific stock. You're thinking that this stock is bullish. So you pull up a chart and see what does the chart tell you, right? And maybe you're used to using the 50-day moving average, but when you pull up that chart and the stock is trading below its 50-day moving average, you're thinking to yourself, well, the 50-day moving average doesn't really agree with, my bullish view of the stock. So what do we do? Instead of moving on to the next stock, what we do is we maybe look at, okay, let's see what the 150-day moving average says, right? And you try to find you try different moving averages until you find a moving average that supports your initial view of having a bullish view on the stock. And I'm sure many of you can think through kind of your own trading history and say, I've been guilty of that, right? Where, you have an indicator that you're used to using. you pull up a chart of a stock that you're interested in, and the indicator doesn't really agree with what your initial views are. So you just look for other indicators until you find one that agrees with you. And that's the subjectivity that we as human beings consistently bring into our trading that cause us to be inconsistent in our research. So what I have done here is I have written a prompt. And what I'll do after this in a few minutes at the end of this presentation is I will show you how you can download my slides, because the prompts that I'll show you, you can literally copy and paste into ChatGPT and use it as a starting point or as a template. But basically, what I've done here is I basically wrote to ChatGPT and I said, I want you to help me analyze charts for my trading and help me stay disciplined with my approach. And what I do is I define my trading strategy in plain English. And that's the work that you're going to need to do if you want this to work for you, is you have to first to be able to define your style of technical analysis in plain English. And that's a good exercise whether or not you use ChatGPT, because you should be able to document what are my rules for technical analysis, or what are my rules to analyze a chart. And you should be able to write it out in plain English. If you're not able to write it out in plain English, then you don't have a strategy and you don't have something that you can actually rely on. And that is actually what you should be working on, right? So here I did a simple strategy. I basically said, I use a 26 period moving average and I use a 20 period CCI. So I use a moving average and I use a momentum indicator. And I basically specify what the conditions are for me to have a bullish view and what the conditions are for me to have a bearish view. And I made a very simple suggestion. I'll take a bullish view if the CCI is above 0 and the stock is above its 26 period moving average, right? So simple, momentum is positive, trading above its moving average, that's considered bullish. And a bearish view is if the CCI is below 0 and the stock is below the 26 period moving average. So if the momentum indicator is negative and the stock is trading below its 26-day moving average, then I consider that as bearish, right? So plain English, I'm identifying what indicators that I'm using and how do I interpret those indicators into a bullish or bearish view. And then what I do, and additionally to that, I add a condition that if the CCI is positive, but the stock is below the 26 period moving average, that generates a new buy signal. And if, let's say, the CCI is negative, but the stock is above the 26 period moving average, that's a new sell signal. And the goal here is to identify bullish periods, bearish periods, and when I want to get in and out of that specific stock. And what I basically is asking me to do is please help me interpret my charts and tell me what my view is on the chart, what my view on the chart should be. Okay, so this specific prompt that I just wrote, you can copy and paste that into ChatGPT and use that immediately to help you interpret your charts. So I'm going to show you how to do that here. I'm going to pull up First Trade. I'm going to pull up a specific, let's go to research stocks and ETFs. And I'm going to pull up a stock, right? I'm going to pull up a stock that I'm currently looking at, Pinterest. It reports earnings next week. I'm going to pull up a real-time chart. And what I'm going to ask Pinterest, what I'm going to have it do is I'm going to add those indicators. I'm going to use a moving average. And I'm going to use a CCI. Those are the two momentum indicators that I use. You can use any indicators that you prefer, whether you use RSI or EMA or whatever you prefer, right? And I'm going to change my moving average to 26 periods, and I already have CCI set to 20 periods. Perfect, okay? And let's pull up a daily chart here for purposes, right? So what this allows me to do is whatever chart I'm looking at, right? And now I can change the chart to a different symbol. I can do what, but I have my indicators that I use, right? And the goal here is so that I'm not switching indicators because I'm looking at a different symbol or I'm validating kind of my views. I can basically take this prompt that I just wrote, right? And like I said, I'll share with you my charts, my slides, so that you can have this exact prompt. And what you can do is you can go into ChatGPT. One second. You can go into ChatGPT. And one of the important things is that you have to use ChatGPT 4.0. With every single ChatGPT chat that you start, you can choose which model you want to use. ChatGPT 4, 4 mini, or 4.0. 4.0 is the best, the most latest version. The mini will do the same thing. It's a little faster. But 4.0, I think, is the best one to use for these specific purposes. And what you do is you basically copy and paste the prompt that I just presented to you. And what you can do in ChatGPT now is I can basically have it take a screenshot of the first trade screen that I just took. And it basically will take a screenshot of that chart that I have. And I can send this off for analysis, right? So it takes a bit of time to write out that prompt, but once you write it out, you have it. And every single time you're looking at a specific chart, you can basically have ChatGPT interpret the chart for you. So what it does here, as you can see, it goes through, it looks at the chart, it looks at the 26 period moving average, it looks at the 20 period CCI, and it tells me an interpretation of it, right? So based on the current chart and your specified rules, the view on Pinterest should be bearish, right? Because in this particular case, the stock is trading below the 26 period moving average and CCI is negative in this particular instance. So that basically allows me to have a objective view on the stock based on my specific rules, right? So I don't have to look at this chart specifically. Now, arguably, the rules that I have written for right now are really simple, right? There's only two indicators that I'm using. The rules are fairly simple, but perhaps you're using more indicators. Perhaps you're using something more complex, right? And you're trying to remove your human subjectivity in the analysis part, right? And that's really the key here, is that if you can have something else that is basically taking the rules that you've written and interpreting it for you so that you're not doing that interpretation yourself, you're removing the human subjectivity from your process and you have a much more objective view on each chart, right? So let me switch this to a different symbol. Let's look at Amazon, for example. Let's look at Amazon and let's go back to that real-time chart. I should have saved my profile, but let me just add this back again. Let's go back to, whoops. I want a moving average. And I want a CCI. Okay, let's go back. We'll do the 26 period moving average. Whoops. 26 period moving average. Obviously, you want to set this next time so that you are looking at the same thing, right? Same charts. Actually, I'm actually going to get the same interpretation here. Let me see if I move to a different time frame, if I get something different. Yeah. This is all going to give me the similar interpretation, but as you can see, it doesn't really matter, right? The goal here is so that the tool basically helps you do the interpretation. So let's do that again. Let's upload this new chart for Amazon. We'll take a screenshot. And I will say, let's look at Amazon now, right? So once I've set my rules, ChatGPT kind of remembers that. I don't have to keep entering my rules for my trading strategy. It basically takes the rules again and interprets it and gives me a read of kind of where we currently sit, right? It'll give me what the reading of the moving average is, what the CCI is, and it'll give me an interpretation in this particular case. So it says, based on the current chart, your specified rules, the view on Amazon should be bearish, right? So all of that work is basically gives me the conclusion that, my views are bearish. Now it's bearish based on the rules that I've written, and it takes a bit of time to write out your rules. But I think that writing out your rules, writing it out on paper, is an incredibly important process that any technical analyst should be doing. Because, like I said, if you can't articulate your strategy on paper, then you don't have a strategy. Until you are able to articulate a strategy and understand why your strategy is your strategy, then you have work to do on your strategy. You have work to do on your analysis. So this process not only helps encourage you to hone your strategy so that you're able to articulate it in plain English. But then if you are able, once you're able to articulate it in English, you can then use a tool like ChatGPT to help you be far more consistent and far more objective in your analysis of a specific chart and help you stay on the right side of your strategy. So if let's say you look at a specific news article or someone else told you about a stock that they really are bullish on, and then you pull up your first trade platform, you plug in your rules, you show them the chart, you show ChatGPT the chart, and ChatGPT's gives you a bearish a signal, then what you say is that, hey, I'm not going to take this particular trade because my analysis does not agree with the view that someone else told me or that this news article is portraying the stock to be. And that's how you can start to become a far more consistent trader as opposed to using technical analysis just as a way to confirm your biases, which I'm sure many of you listening here are can agree that you have been guilty of that at some point where you may have deviated from your rules because someone else told you about a stock that you got excited about, even though your charts were not necessarily agreeing with it. You may have looked at other indicators to try to find a way to agree with it. That's really the key here, is to help you articulate a set of rules that you are saying, this is why I use technical analysis to help me become objective in my trading, and I'm going to try to stick to my rules, and I'm going to use ChatGPT to help me do that. And this is an incredibly powerful tool to help you kind of build the strategy and then stick to that strategy. Okay. So this once you do it once, like I said, the hard work is articulating your strategy the first time. It might take you 30 minutes, an hour, depending on how familiar you are with your strategy. But that 30 minutes, an hour is arguably more important than any other time that you can spend. Because once you do that work once, any symbol that you type in, you'll be able to um, use that for any charts going forward. Okay, so that's the first use case of ChatGPT, in my opinion. That's incredibly powerful now because it basically can interpret what you're seeing on your screen. So for technical analysis, that's an incredibly powerful tool. Okay, you can also do it for fundamental analysis as well, but this is really where you have the first time AI is able to actually see what you're seeing and help you become, your analysis for technical analysis. The second thing I want to show you is talking about your trading rules, right? So once you've identified a chart, once you've identified a specific symbol that you want to trade, when it comes to options, there's usually a lot more things that you need to incorporate into your trading rules for an options trade. Just as an example, I've written out 7 rules that I generally might want to use in my trading when I'm trading options. So the first one is I never want to risk more than $1,000 per trade. Now you're going to customize that based on your portfolio size. So if let's say you have a $100,000 portfolio, maybe you want to risk $2,000 in each trade. If you have a $20,000 portfolio, maybe you only want to risk $500 a trade. Whatever your risk tolerance is, that's a good starting point for you. And you should use these rules as a template for your writing your own rules. So the first thing I always want to define is how much I'm willing to risk on each trade. And I don't want to ever exceed that on a trade, which means that I won't ever find myself in a position where I've blown up my account because I've traded too many contracts. Second rule is I only want to trade with the 6-month trend is, with this trend, never against it. That's just you may not necessarily follow that rule, but that's just an example of a rule that perhaps you might have. Some people might want to trade with the trend. Some people might want to trade against the trend. Whatever your process is, this is another exercise for you to be able to articulate the rules that you have for yourself when it comes to trading. Third rule that I have, whoops. Third rule that I have here is I only want to purchase options if the IB rank is below 30, and I want to be selling options if the IB rank is above 30. Again, this is a rule that I have. You may not use IV rank. You might want to use different thresholds. That's up to you. I'm just using this as an example to help me, again, define when I want to be a seller of options and when I want to be a buyer of options. Next, I only want to trade. I only want to trade when the options play score is better than 80. Many of you are familiar with the options play score. It's a risk to reward metric on the options play platform. I definitely don't want to trade anything with an options play score less than 80. So that's a rule that I have for myself there. I also only want to trade when the liquidity is either very liquid or somewhat liquid. I definitely want to avoid stocks where it is not liquid, right? So with options, there's a very wide range of liquidity with regards to optionable securities, and I generally only want to trade options on something that's either very liquid or somewhat liquid. I generally only want to take bullish positions when the relative strength is greater than 5 and bearish positions when the relative strength is below 5. This is another rule that I have from a technical analysis perspective. The idea is that I only want to buy stocks that are outperforming the market, and I only want to sell stocks that are underperforming the overall markets. And then I want to avoid entering a position if the stock is up or down by more than 5% on a given day. Basically, if the stock has already gapped 10% on open, I generally I'm not going to want to chase that, right? And I know, and this is something to just avoid being impulsive. That something's in the news, it's up 10%. Let me try to chase it. This helps me prevent me from doing kind of stupid things like that, right? A lot of these rules are to help prevent you from doing stupid things, and basically, my prompt is, should I place the following trade? If not, help me understand why. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a trade setup. And for this, I'm going to use the options play tool. So when you use the first trade, when you're using first trade, when you go to your home screen, you have access to the options wizard. The options wizard. This is the tool that I'm going to be showing you using this prompt here today. So the prompt that I wrote was specifically written for options play, right? So you can modify these prompts for your own needs, but I wrote this prompt specifically for options play. So I'm going to use Pinterest, for example, right? And I'm going to use Pinterest, for example, let's say Pinterest reports earnings next week, and I want to take a bearish view here on Pinterest. So what I can do is I can basically take this prompt, I can take this entire prompt that I've now written for myself. I took the time to write out my rules. In this particular case, it took me about 10 minutes to write these rules. You might have to take these and customize it for yourself. But I basically take these rules. I'll start a new chat in ChatGPT just to keep this clean. I paste this rule into ChatGPT, and again, I take a screenshot of the. Let me go back to the first trade. I'll take a screenshot of my first trade platform, which in this particular case has the options play platform up, right? So I'll upload that specific trade, the Pinterest trade that I need, and I'll send this off for analysis. And what this basically does is that once I find a trade that I'm interested in, I don't have to spend the mental capacity to go through to remember all my rules and think through whether or not this trade meets all of my rules. I can basically look at I can basically look at I can have ChatGPT do the interpretation for me and tell me whether or not I'm meeting my specific rules or not. So as you can see, risk per trade, it's good. 6 month trend is neutral. So I'm not trading against the trend, but it's not really also in my favor. The IV rank is above 30, so that doesn't quite jive with my strategy. The options play score is good. The liquidity is good. The relative strength does not align, and the daily stock movement does align. So out of my 7 rules, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 rules were met. 3 of the rules were either inconclusive or I'm actually breaking my rules, right? So this gives me a clear indication that, okay, this does not fit all of the rules of my trading. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to only trade stuff that meets every single one of your rules. But if you're going to break your rules, you should be aware of which ones you're breaking, how many are you breaking, because you should be able to look back after you place a trade and audit your trades afterwards and say, did I follow my rules? If this trade worked out, did it work out because I followed my rules? Did it work out because I broke my rules? You should have a way to be able to audit yourself and then keep yourself accountable, because if you don't do that, you're never going to learn how to become a more consistent trader and a trader that follows their own rules that they set out for themselves. So let's take a look at maybe another chart. Let me see if I can find, um, let's look at Microsoft, for example. Microsoft reports earnings next week. Let's say I want to take a bullish trade on Microsoft going into next week. Let's say I'm looking at this September 430, 480 call vertical. So let's take a look at this trade again now. Let's say I'm looking at that. We'll take a screenshot of the trade. Let's review, what about this Microsoft trade? So as you can see, once I've put in the work once, the next trade becomes much easier, right? So this tells me my maximum risk on this trade is 1665, which exceeds my $1,000 limit. Right off the bat, I've exceeded uh, my my rules. So here, as you can see, out of the seven rules, I'm effectively breaking three of those rules now, right? So this is something that we have to be that this is something that we have to pay attention to, because this allows me to quickly, without having to spend too much time, say, okay, you know what, this might not be the best trade idea. It breaks three out of my seven rules. I'm not going to place this trade, right? And you can even get more specific about your rules. You can say, some of the rules, there's some flexibility on, other rules there are no flexibility on, right? So I can maybe say my risk tolerance one, there's no flexibility, even if it goes over $1,000 by a single dollar. That's a trade that I will not take. On other things, maybe with the relative strength or the 6 month trend, maybe there's a little bit of flexibility there. If you can articulate it into plain English, then you can have ChatGPT be your assistant on every single trade and help you audit a trade before you get into a trade. So you have a very clear mental picture of, if I'm placing a trade, does this trade meet all my rules? If it does, great. If it doesn't, I still might place that trade, but at least I know exactly how many of my rules I'm breaking. So if I come back to this trade after we close it out, sometime in the future, if it works out, if it doesn't work out, I can come back and look at it and say, did I follow my rules? If I didn't, which ones did I break? And did that break of those rules cause me to lose money on this trade? And maybe from there, you do that more time. If you do that enough times, you will hopefully be able to build a pattern and a process where you will start learning how important it is to follow your rules. You might even learn which rules are important, which ones are not as important to your success for trading, and your rules will evolve as you become a better trader. And this is the process by which you can have AI help you become a better trader without having to necessarily talk to anyone else. AI can be your tool that you can use to help you stay objective to your rules and make sure that you stick to the rules that you have placed for yourself. Incredibly powerful tool. It just takes a little bit of time, a little bit of effort to articulate your own trading rules, whether that's for technical analysis, for options trading, and hopefully what I've written here today gives you a starting point, a template that you can use to start trying to articulate your own overall strategy. And then lastly, this is really more open-ended. This is really more so to kind of just give you some ideas of how you can potentially also use ChatGPT. You can have ChatGPT be kind of your fundamental data provider and help you, build trend and ratio analysis. So here's an example of one where I basically asked ChatGPT. Let me see if I can find the history of that and I can show it to you. Um, Yeah. Here we go. So here's a chart, right? I said, can you tell me the forward PE ratio of a Magnificent Seven stocks? And it pulled the information and gave me the PE ratios. Then it said, can you tell me what the expected future growth rates for these seven stocks are? And it pulled all of that. And it said, can you quote me the future revenue growth rates? And it pulled that. Um, and I said that are there any tech stocks that have a market cap greater than 50 billion? And it gave me kind of I'm sorry, are there any 50 billion? Are there any tech companies that have a market cap greater than 50 billion and has an EPS growth rate that's less than 5%? And it kind of goes through that and pulls, NetEase, PayPal, Marvell Technology, Xiaomi, these are all stocks that have market caps greater than 50 billion, but have a relatively low EPS growth rate. And then I ask you, do any of these stocks that I just mentioned above have a forward PE ratio that's greater than 25 times? The idea here is what I was trying to say is, are there any stocks that aren't expected to grow very much, but are trading at pretty rich valuations, right? And it kind of gave me some of these ideas and eventually helped me kind of narrow it down to two stocks that are not expected to grow very fast, yet are trading at relatively high PE ratios. And this is all just me basically typing into ChatGPT basic questions that I would, if I was to ask like an analyst on a trade desk, hey, are there any stocks that meet these specific criteria, like a stock screener almost, but I'm doing it in plain English. And it pulls the data for me and basically returns the data for me. And eventually, what I did is I basically said, can you show me draw me a chart of the revenue and EPS trend lines. And what it basically shows me is that here's the Marvell Technology revenue over the last 8 quarters. Here's the EPS over that same 8 quarters. And here's the overall trend. As you can see, revenue is kind of trending lower over the last 8 quarters. EPS is trending lower over the last 8 quarters. So, this is a stock that was relatively expensive, yet was trading at a fairly rich valuation and not expected to grow very fast. So that's just an example of how you can have ChatGPT pull fundamental data, provide you with trend and ratio analysis so that you can kind of hone into which specific stocks might be worth paying attention to for your analysis. The other thing it can help you do is summarize research reports. So I was looking at the Morningstar research that you get with your first trade account, right? So for example, if I'm looking at let's look at UPS. UPS just reported earnings this morning. It's certainly disappointed in some ways. So let's say you were looking at UPS. And as you can see, this was just updated yesterday. One of the things that you can basically do is you can copy and paste the analyst notes that were just reported yesterday. There's a lot of notes, as you can see here. Let me see if I can copy this. And I'll start a new chat and I'll say, can you help me summarize? Oops. Can you help me summarize the UPS update for earnings? I copy and pasted this whole thing in, and it basically can help me provide a summary of kind of what happened in the last earnings report, right? And a lot of times these research reports, they can go really long and they can get really technical and they can have a lot of information, and sometimes it's hard to figure out what the analyst views are from that specific research report. And ChatGPT is a really fantastic tool in helping you summarize it. You can ask them specific questions like, what's the analyst's view on the earnings report? What has changed in the last quarter? What's the trend of revenue? What's the trend of EPS? You can ask ChatGPT these questions, give the ChatGPT kind of this information, and you have this full write-up, a full fundamental write-up of the business that you can pull directly from your first trade account using your research tool. And you can basically ask ChatGPT to be your analyst to summarize and interpret what the analyst is saying so that you can have a better understanding of the business before you invest in any specific company or investment opportunity. Incredibly powerful tool at doing that. And lastly, um, you can also provide insights into Fed speak. You can take the Fed minutes, put it into ChatGPT, and you can actually say, what has changed from the last meeting to this meeting? Has the tone shift? You can ask, say, like, is Chairman Powell more hawkish in the last meeting than the previous meeting? Is it more dovish? And ChatGPT is actually able to take a large amount of information, whether that's text, whether that's images, and help you answer your questions that you have regarding that information. This is just the tip of the iceberg as far as how you can potentially have ChatGPT help you interpret different financial data, whether that's in chart format, whether that's in text format, whether that's a graph, whether that's financial statements. If you can give ChatGPT the data and you can do it either in text or images now, which is really kind of the big jump in terms of how ChatGPT has become far, far more useful. Now you can truly interact with ChatGPT. You can truly interact with ChatGPT as if it's just a person sitting next to you in front of your computer, and you're saying, "What do you think of this?" or "Go read that and summarize it for me." It does all of that for you. Incredibly, incredibly powerful. So with that, hopefully this kind of gives you an idea of what we can do. So what we learned here today is really what the latest version of ChatGPT can do. Like I said, the multimodal input is true interaction across all mediums. It really is like as if you had a trading assistant or a research assistant sitting next to you at your desk, and you can just ask it questions, and it can interpret things for you and give you an analysis, and it's never biased in its views, especially if you can articulate your rules for your trading. It can stick to those rules and help you stick to your rules, um, help you remain disciplined with the help of AI. Okay, so if you want access to my slides, which has the specific prompts that I have written that you can copy and paste and customize to your own, you can download it by going to either trade.optionsplay.com/ft-chatgpt, or you can point your phone to that QR code on your screen. Either one will give you, if you download our slides. And with that, what I'll open this up is for Q&A. If you have any questions, please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A window, and I'll try to answer as many questions as I have time for before I have to sign off during today's session. Looks like I've already got a few questions in the Q&A window. Let's take a look. Instead of uploading a chart, can we ask ChatGPT to generate a chart and analyze against it? Yes, you actually can. The new ChatGPT 4.0, you can have it pull historical data and generate a chart for you as well. However, that chart, uh, you know, that just, you can do that, but it's just more work for you. So I don't necessarily recommend doing that. Where do you access that ChatGPT? You have to you either have to download it or you can just go to chatgpt.com. So what I did not cover is a new first trade AI tool, which is also incredibly powerful in its own way, but it's different than what I'm showing you here today. Sorry. There's a question here saying, can ChatGPT help you select the best option strikes? It can. I think the challenge is that you'd have to supply ChatGPT with all of the options chain data, which is going to be challenging. But if you could find a way to show, send a screenshot of the options chain, and you can define what your how you define as best option strikes, it can absolutely do the work for you. But you have to first be able to articulate your rules before it can do the interpretation for you. It's not just, you can't just say, find me the best strikes, and it finds the best strikes because it doesn't know what quote unquote best means, right? So you have to help ChatGPT define what best means for you, and then for it to do the work for you, if that makes any sense. Yes, this will, you can get a copy of these slides using the QR code here on your screen, or go to trade.optionsplay.com/ft-chatgpt. And these recordings are available to you on your First Trade website under the research tab. There's another great question saying, if you wrote that you don't want to trade stocks that are not liquid, how does ChatGPT know if it's not liquid or not? That's actually, so the ChatGPT doesn't know if it's liquid or not, but your options wizard tool does, right? So all the information that I put on my rules, they're on the screen, right? So for example, when you pull up Pinterest or any symbol, when you pull up a specific symbol, you actually have the liquidity up here, and you have the IV rank, you have the relative strength, you have the 6 month trend. They're all here on your screen. So the chat GPT is actually pulling the information from your screen and interpreting it for you. Do I have any samples that pass all 7 rules? I don't know that I have one off the top of my head. I can try to find one, but I don't have one off the top of my head. There's a few questions just that are kind of very open-ended, like, can ChatGPT just give me recommendations of strategies, and what's the best approach? Like, look, ChatGPT is not some miracle worker where you can just say, like, tell me what to trade, and it gives you like optimal trades. That's not how it works. You have to first define what your rules are in order for it to do the work for you. It's just an assistant. It's not a magic um oracle of the world or the market for you, so I want to set some real expectations about that. How do you access ChatGPT? You go to chatgpt.com. ChatGPT 4.0 is free, or it is available for free. There is a limit as to the number of messages you can send for free. If you do pay the $20 a month, you get unlimited access to ChatGPT. Generally, AI provides a qualified reply that says not to rely on the AI answers without double checking. How do you handle this? So when you have a very specific set of rules, I tend to find that you can find it quite reliable. But yeah, you should always double check it. But I have found that when you have a very specific set of rules, that it can be quite reliable. Can you write out the URL? It's right here on your screen, trade.optionsplay.com/ft-chatgpt, right here on the top of your screen, all highlighted in purple for you. Have you used ChatGPT to pick the strike prices when selling or buying calls? Was it effective? No, I've never tried to do that because that's what the options play tool does for you, right? You don't need ChatGPT to do that for you. The options play tool does that for you. You type in your symbol, you specify whether you're bullish or bearish on the specific stock, and options play will help you select strategy, expiration date, strike price. So options play already does that for me. It does it much faster than ChatGPT. So I wouldn't necessarily rely on ChatGPT to figure out what to trade or what strikes to trade or what strategy to trade, because that's what the options play tool is optimized specifically for, and it does it in under a couple of seconds. No, this would not work with First Trade GPT. First Trade GPT is a specific AI tool for research, right? It's not a general AI, which is what ChatGPT is. You can analyze multiple charts at once. How many can you do at once? I'm not 100% sure. You absolutely can upload multiple charts at once for analysis. Yeah, there is a difference between ChatGPT and ChatGPT 4.0. 4.0 is the only one that allows you to upload images and interpret images for you. So you have to use ChatGPT 4.0 for what I'm showing you here today. Can you clarify why you don't like chat to generates its own chart? Just because I don't know how reliable that is. I know that the trading view chart that you have on your chart, calculates the moving averages correctly. It calculates the indicators correctly. I don't know that ChatGPT, if you said, pull me historical data and calculate CCI, that it necessarily calculates CCI correctly. So that's why I always prefer using a reliable charting source for that. Okay, I think that covers the questions that I see here in the screens. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time here today. Like I said, this is a non-traditional session. I hope that this is helpful in giving you a better understanding of how to potentially utilize AI to help you become a better trader. It's an incredibly powerful tool. It takes a little bit of work on your end to kind of write out your rules first, but I would argue that that is very, very useful, even if you never use AI, to be able to sit down and articulate your trading rules. Because if you're able to articulate your trading rules, you're going to have a much better shot at being able to follow your rules and stick to your rules and be a more consistent trader. Just that if you apply AI in addition to that, you will basically have an assistant to help you stick to those rules with a much more objective view on things. With that, thank you so much. I hope you guys have a great trading day.